Hello and welcome to the Gambling Files podcast, our final episode for 2023. The next time you hear a new episode from us, it will in fact be the future 2024. And I don't know about you, co-host Fintan Costello, but I'm excited for the future.
I'm always excited for the future. That's just
Is that because the present sucks so much?
No, it's just my endless Labrador-esque optimism, I think. I'm just very optimistic about the future. So, which probably means then I don't enjoy the present as much, or
Well, that's not Labrador-esque then, because dogs are fully present.
In the moment. That's true. Yeah. Yeah, there's probably a whole thing about that, right? You're always looking to the future. You're never enjoying the present. And
it's true.
Must be an entire Stoic book dedicated to that, written by some very smart person a very long time ago or something.
Think about dogs being fully present in the moment and all of that, and enjoying, everything where they are. Does that mean I just can't help but think of a dog licking its bum and being fully in the present. But, oh, great, I'm licking my bum. Still licking my bum. Oh, this is where my balls used to be. I'll get my coat. So, 2023, it's been quite a year, Fintan.
It has.
What have the highlights been for you in terms of gambling industry things and anything personal and good as well, or personal and bad?
The highlights, the gambling industry things. Huh. As you can tell, we clearly don't prepare as I go into this long pause.
I didn't tell you that I was going to ask that.
No, it's how I like it. I love surprises.
Well, I'm gonna go with a couple of relatively recent things.
Go on.
I think what's going on at Entain is really interesting.
My God, private Yesha. When I read the FT article, and you're kind of reading it like, the activist investors come in, they make a lot of this happens, right? They try and pick holes, whatever. Fair enough. But then when I got to the bit about being nicknamed Private Yesha by the finance and audit team, you just have to stop and take a moment. At how just amazingly brutal the nickname is. And then the second you read that, you're like, okay, there's literally nothing you can do that will recover from that. So it doesn't matter how many barbarians at the gate, or whatever you want to call the private equity lads or the activist investors, you never call them. The nickname was the nail in the coffin, because that just
what's so scathing about the nickname though?
So apparently during COVID, herself and the chairman started taking private planes to do the board meetings in Gibraltar because it wasn't safe to EasyJet it or whatever. And then apparently there was a bit more a lot of private jet usage too, or I don't know if it was a lot or whatever the spectrum was, but private jets to America, and there was Formula One sponsorship stuff. And so it just feels like there was a lot more private jet usage than there would have been maybe historically in the Entain world.
So if there's less now, and say the Formula One sponsorship's gone, we should probably contact them and let them know that sponsorships are available of the podcast.
We can get them as much global exposure. In terms of countries reached, I reckon we punch, not in terms of obviously the number of people reached in the country, but in terms of geographic spread, I would say we are up there with F1. Like we were charting in Slovakia last week.
Big week for us in Slovakia.
Welcome to all our Slovakian listeners.
Slovakian overlords.
But I also think so. It's not using a private jet. You're FTSE 100 CEO. Lots of FTSE 100 CEOs use private jets. I think it's the nickname that was the nail in the coffin. I think there's probably a lot of gambling industry CEOs who've jumped on the old PJ to get somewhere a bit quicker, or particularly in America where it's super common to use.
Well, there was a lot of scandal
about.
There's a lot of scandal about IGT doing exactly that. I mean, this is several years ago now. And it was a CEO thing, I think, if I remember correctly. But it was a CEO thing there. Here's one thing I wonder, because that was also a female CEO.
This was my thought too. I think I think it's so. Look, I think she was also dealt a difficult hand because you come in as so she's not an industry person, so she doesn't she's never worked in the shops kind of thing, right? So she's not a gambling industry person. She was a Ned. She comes from a media background, and she got the hot seat. There's obviously a lot of legacy, issues within Entain, so the Turkish stuff and whatever. Um, the So I think there was, that's always difficult to walk into. So I have a lot of sympathy for that type of stuff. I think, has she been judged harsher than her male peers or peers? Well, you kind of look at Flutter and you kind of go, well, not really. Flutter's running a very tight ship. Triple Eight, you'd argue, well, Entain's bigger, but Entain would be doing better than Triple Eight. So it's kind of like what was the expectation?
Well, is the other thing, and this is the thing that's very frequently rolled out as a criticism. It's the acquisition of STS, right? So STS, an operator in Poland, doing pretty well from what I recall. But a lot of criticism was aimed at her for that. Like, she's the only person that signed a fucking check. CEOs don't have unilateral power. There's no way that she's come and said, lads, I'm buying this. I don't give two fucks what you say. I'm going to go and seal the deal in my private jet now. There's not a chance on earth that happened. So why does all the criticism land at her feet? Due diligence would have been done before the deal was signed. Lots of people would have seen that. Why is all the criticism at her feet? I think there's some easy targeting going on there. I think there's some lazy ass shit going on there.
Look, there's, particularly for non-American companies or whatever. This isn't Facebook where Zuckerberg wakes up and decides to buy Instagram for whatever billions and it just gets done the next day kind of thing. The corporate governance, there's a chairman, there's the CEO reports to the chairman, the CEO reports to the board. The board would have to sign off on any deal for sure. Personally, I think if I was to pick a deal, I'd pick Unicorn. I think STS. Okay, I'm not in the details on the pricing and stuff, but it's a local champion. Poland's, that whole region of Europe from a sports betting perspective is super interesting and fast growing, and there's lots of clever stuff going on there. If you're on a roll-up strategy, M&A, most M&A deals fail. So if you've got a 50-50 strike rate, you're actually doing pretty well. That's just the nature of the beast. But yeah, I agree. I think it's easy to criticize. It's easy for activist investors to pick holes. How much of it's justified, I don't know. But the nickname, oh my God, that was just savage.
Yeah, it's fair. Does also raise all these questions about whether this is part of manoeuvring for a deal to be struck on a certain joint venture.
Well, look, at this point, it's the jewel in the crown. If you want exposure to him, all right, you don't want to buy DraftKings, you can't buy FanDuel. Like BetMGM's literally next on the list.
It's a pretty damn short list too.
Well, there's a lot of brands in America, but MGM's definitely doing the business. They're doing a lot of great stuff. It's got a great brand. It's been run incredibly well. There's a lot of, it's going to take a lot for an ESPN bet or a Fanatics or anything like that to get even close. So it makes perfect sense. It's a prime asset. And if MGM were going to revisit I think I saw somebody say here, like, now's the time to do it when there basically is no CEO, if you're going to go buy Entain. But then, I don't know, do they want to buy Entain? Who knows? Who knows? Yeah, I think I've just been thinking about your question, like the other things this year. I think stuff that's impressed me, the stuff that Rivalry.com is doing.
Yeah, we had that lovely chap on from Rivalry, didn't we?
We did. I'm furiously. Hang on, let me get. Of course, I know his name. It's
Let's call him David.
Oh no! Well, sorry, it wasn't. Cody's our guy. So Cody, yeah,
Cody's sharp.
He brought on. Well, Cody's their PR guy as well, or comms, whatever. So yeah, they're doing some really super smart stuff. Very esport, like just nailing their audience and building everything for their audience. That was fantastic. The other one I loved, and I'm just pulling stuff from the top of my head,
It was David King. Sorry.
David King, that's it. Look at you. Your friend who's got the non-profit casino.
Oh yeah, Alex Dixon.
Phenomenal. Love that.
And a top man. I mean, he's just like he's just got one of those brains. Do you know what I mean? His shit seems so together.
Oh, for sure. Like just like there's been a few people on where I'm like, oh, I would just like walk around and carry his briefcase or her briefcase for a few months and just listen.
Yeah.
The other one, who we said that about? Seth Shore was the other one.
Seth Shore, yeah.
For sure, I would. Oh, see what I did there?
I did too.
I thought that way, like, he was just so impressive. Big fan of him, and just all the stuff he's doing. Who else? Yeah, they were kind of, there's obviously we've had a lot of guests on, and they're all wonderful. They're all our favorite.
All wonderful.
All of them. So yeah, there's some super smart stuff going on there. The other, like, I'm just picking Fintan's fan favorites. Will Woodham from Fitzdares. Do you know what arrived in the post for me the other day?
No, Fintan, I don't know, and I couldn't possibly guess.
I got my Fitzdares hippo in the post. Will came through and sent me the hippo.
Amazingly, I did not get a Fitzdares hippo in the post. What are the odds?
So yeah, I got my Fitzdares hippo, and it's going to pride a place in my new apartment. So I'm very excited about that. And that's how easy I am to bribe people. It's how easy I am to bribe. The porcelain hippo will do it.
Oh, I'm way easier. It actually just needs money for me.
So and then on the go on.
I was thinking one of the most divisive stories of the year was Clarion announcing their move, which ties in quite neatly with corporate overlords.
Indeed. So I saw. So we had a couple of episodes like this. So so ice moving. So London 2024, last London ice for a while.
Last hurrah.
And then it's off to sunny Spain. So that'll be a big one. And we need to sort ourselves out before I get fully booked. But we'll chat afterwards. So I think that's a really big deal. And I think I think this ice in London's I think everybody's going to be there. I think it's just going to be one of those, like, it's probably going to be the best one ever, and then it's going to cause like, oh, should we even move kind of questions.
It's going to be
I
like the
think that'll
last
be
ever Ludlow College bash at the Top Hotel in Craven Arms. It was chaos, Fintan. It was chaos. There were free cigarettes because somebody very kindly ripped the cigarette machine off the wall. and it went downhill from there pretty much. Yeah, it was chaos. Banned from there. I mean, the entire college is banned. Is banned from the Craven Arms Hotel. Which, if you've ever been to the Craven Arms Hotel, you'll know it's not the loss that they think it is. But I don't think there's a cigarette machine at XL, so I think XL is probably safe.
Pretty safe. So yeah, so I think that's going to be a huge one. So I'm looking forward to that. And the other big episode, obviously, was our gambling commissioner guest.
Yeah, that was big.
And it was probably the only time we did a two-parter all season, all year.
It's the only two-part we've ever done, I think. Usually we just do really long episodes, but that would have been about 3.5 hours.
Yeah, it was a lot. But I think, it shows the benefit of long form, which was nice. And talk, like, it's such a, like, the Gambling Commission, everything going on. There's so much, like, polarization in lots of different directions on it. Andrew kind of gets lightning rod, not caught in the middle, but kind of a lightning rod for a lot of, he's either not doing enough or he's doing too much, or, so you are in that kind of very difficult position. But it was being able to spend a bit of time and not trying to do it in 120 characters or whatever. I think it was nice just to understand and hear from him, like, how thoughtful him and his team are, the nuance, the perspective. And I think in our kind of TikTokification of the world, where everything's a soundbite, just a bit more kind of thought and taking time. And, and one of the phrases he used, which is I've used quite a lot since, I've happily stolen and put in my back pocket, is I can hold two ideas in my head at the same time. And the more I think about that, the more you realize everything's designed. Well, you either like it. If you don't like this, you hate it, or if you don't like this, you're against it. And it's like, well, no, that's not. I'm not a big fan of tomatoes, but I'll eat a tomato-based pasta dish. There's nuance, right?
I was writing about that on the Gaming Boardroom's daily newsletter, www.thegamingboardroom.com.
10,000 followers now, I believe. I saw the stat the other day.
That's like across different things and deduplicated. And over 1,000 just on LinkedIn,
that's
which is nice. Which we've also achieved with the Gambling Files podcast.
Come on.
We're at 1150 now, I think, something like that.
Sponsorships available.
They are. No, I was writing about that. I was writing about this idea that if you're not for something, then you must hate it. And it's this polarization and people finding their tribe, and the tribe has to be completely polar, and there is literally no nuance in anything. And you have to have an opinion. And actually, I think what's going on with Israel at the moment is a really great example, because people are being pushed into taking a stance on it. They're being pushed into having an opinion, and that opinion being taken as some definitive thing, despite the fact they're being, and actually what's been going on with American universities is just fucking bizarre. There's this on the one hand, this is hate speech, this is freedom of speech, etc., etc. It's just like, The world's gone. The world was fucking mental, and now the world's actually lost its shit further. And I'm going to have to come up with a new classification. It's like in Australia when it got so hot in Alice Springs, they had to come up with a new color on the temperature map for the TV weather.
The burnt toast color.
I think they went with a dark purple for the 50s. But yeah, I'm going to have to come up with a new holy shit, everything's batshit classification. Because the world's just, and it is this polarity in this. Like you say, if you're not for this, you're against it. So I hate you. Well, yeah, I'm friends with loads of people that I disagree with. Absolutely shitloads.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that. And I'm fine with disagreeing with them. I still respect them and I still like them. You know, Fern's dad voted Tory. He's still great. He's still a brilliant granddad. He's still a lovely bloke. He just got his voting wrong. Pete, if you're listening, I'm just kidding. Fintan, I'm not kidding. It's true. I know. So yeah, but yeah, the Clarion thing that was extremely divisive. I mean, it's not a bad year when for business you have to go to Barcelona. I mean, maybe I'm slightly biased here. I've never been mugged. I've never been pickpocketed. I've never been threatened on the street. Actually, no, I have been threatened on the street, but it didn't go very well. And I don't sort of see those things as being particularly threatening. I know that probably sounds awful because it probably is scary for some folks, but there are ways to behave in which to not put yourself in harm's way.
Agreed. Look, it's yeah. You can be. You have to be aware.
I had a colleague once describe me as unmuggable. He said just because you walk around like you fucking own the place wherever you are. Yeah, it's true. I do that.
Well, it's more about, you know, if you're a mugger or a pickpocket, you're kind of like, who's the easiest target? And they kind of just look at you and just go, too much hassle. Probably no money in his wallet anyway.
Yeah, he's clearly, but he doesn't have a fucking hippo.
Air freighted. Came in on a chopper. Fitzstairs does things in style, so they do. I'll tell you what.
I can well believe it.
How they tranquilized it is beyond me, but anyway.
It's amazing.
So yeah, what was I going to say?
I don't know.
Yeah, no, look, but Barcelona's a great city, great food, great, easy to get to.
Loads of nice places to go and eat, loads of nice bars, there's clubs, there's a beach. Do you know what I mean? Going there for business, it is not the end of the world.
Got one of my favorite steak restaurants, so it's all good.
Yeah, I'd love to know the name of it so I can go and stand outside and salivate at the window.
Well, maybe we'll go together, John.
That's unlikely, Fintan. Oh, but I tell you what, I could probably stop you getting mugged.
They just assume you're the bouncer. They give you a sandwich and stick you in the back.
Right, when I was on Casino International, Paul would always say, you should really get a suit. I'm like, I'm not wearing a suit. So why not? Because I look like a box in a suit. I just look fucking ridiculous. So I'm not doing it. And I never did. And later, scruffiness became my trademark. No, I'm just kidding. It became my thing. No. On a personal level, it's been a big year for me. Yeah, my first year I've been in the gambling industry 18 years, I think. This is my first year not doing it as editor or managing editor of Casino International. And that's been...
it's been a year now, isn't it?
Yeah, so in fact, I finished last December. I finished the December issue and that was it. Luckily for them, I recommended my replacement to them, Matt Broughton, who's a lovely, lovely man. Big fan of Matt. Big fan of Matt. So, I mean, you know, It's good for them.
Mm.
So this year I've been working on the podcast. Obviously, I've been doing the gaming boardroom with Kate Chambers and Greg Saint, and that's coming along nicely. Got a nice bit of momentum going on that. www.thegamingboardroom.com. And Clarion's publishing arm, IGB, commissioned me to write columns and features occasionally. So that's been really good
Which
as
have
well.
been great. I've enjoyed those.
Yeah, they seem to like it best when I'm losing my shit about something. So that's good. I've got a pretty much unlimited repertoire for that. But no, it's been great, and working with Robin, the top man on that, has been really good.
Yeah, they're a good bunch.
So yeah, that's been good. I've only had one thing cut out of an article.
Really?
Yeah.
Are you calling me names again?
No. But I put a joke in about a religious group.
Jesus.
And that got cut out.
And is it a religious group who takes it really badly?
Yes, it is. If you can name me one that doesn't, I'd love to meet them.
The spectrums.
So that was good fun. And I mean, I'm not saying it hasn't been a tough year, because it has been really difficult. But you spend 17 years working on one project essentially, albeit with lots of changes. And I developed it and introduced new things to it. Not least the awards. And the European Casino Awards is taking place on the first night of ICE. And that was my brainchild and my baby. And they're continuing that program. And yeah, it's kind of, it's weird adjusting to. Well, I guess I was probably institutionalized.
17 years is a long time for anything. It's a huge part of your life.
Yeah. But yeah, it's been an interesting year. And it, financially, it has been completely different, because one thing you do lose is a steady paycheck, and that was not ideal. I've had some sticky patches in the year, to say the least, but no regrets. Good. So that's a pretty good starting point. Yeah. You got any plans for Christmas?
I am flying to the UK. Going down to near where my sister lives, and my parents and my brother are coming over from Ireland, and we've got a Airbnb kind of thing, and so we rented a house, and we're going to have a big kind of family Christmas in the UK for a few days.
That's pretty exciting.
I'm really looking forward to it. I'm flying on the Saturday, and the AA have put out it'll be the worst traffic day of the year. Bring food, bring warm clothing, basically bring a survival bag is what they've warned anybody driving kind of Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So I'm kind of braced for just sitting in a car, and then we're going from Bristol down to Taunton direction. So I think we do the M5, I think. Probably. And anyway, the road, one of the motorways we're on is one of the hotspots for bad traffic. So I'm just mentally braced for spending a day traveling.
So you're going to somewhere near Taunton?
Yep.
Wow. That's where all my ancestors are from.
That's where my sister lives. So it's a bit further.
Does she know my mate Garth? He lives just outside Taunton.
No idea.
Now Garth,
we've never talked about you.
Well, you're missing a trick there. But I might have mentioned Garth on this podcast before, because he has the best, in old versions of Microsoft Word, the best correction I've ever seen. His name is Garth Sumter, and it would correct it to Girth Sphincter.
That is brilliant.
It really is. But no, so there's a River Brew in that area of the world. And in fact, there's a greater concentration of Bruford's historic. In fact, there's a Bruford's Jewellers in Taunton. And I mean, Bruford is an unbelievably uncommon surname.
I will
and they all
make sure to
originate
tell
from that
everybody
area.
in the family. I will tell everybody in the family that story.
Do it.
I'll tell them about my mate, John.
My stories don't always go down well, though, Fintan, as listeners to this episode will discover when I share a story with our guest, Tony Kelly. And he waits patiently for the punchline, which never comes.
But you got to think about it, like as an ex-footballer, like the hours he'd have spent in like locker rooms, training pitches, coaches, just lads banter and jokes.
Oh, he'd be the Archbishop of Banterbury.
I think just his expectations for let me tell you a story.
Yeah.
It's just
I shouldn't have gone there.
It's hard to it's like telling Gordon Ramsay a recipe, right? Oh yeah, here's how I make scrambled eggs, and it's just like.
But I would totally tell Gordon Ramsay how I make scrambled eggs. It's the double cream, Fintan. It makes all the difference.
I saw a clip the other day where he'd made pad thai for some super Thai chef, and just the sheer look of disgust on the Thai chef's face of like, this is not pad thai. This is horrible. Like, so you know the way like Gordon like abuses like the poor lad working in the dog and ear pub or whatever pub kitchen, and just like it was pretty funny.
My favourite Ramsay clip is still when he puts the two pieces of bread around the lady's head. And what's this? Sandwich. It's the way she looks down. An idiot sandwich. It's glorious. Kitchens are great places for banter as well.
Yeah, and drugs. But
yeah, I didn't. I worked in a kitchen for a while, but I didn't see any drugs, unfortunately. At that particular time in my life, I'd have hoovered them all up. Maybe they saw me and realised that and just hid them. Oh, well, it's for the best. So, right, we have two corporate overlords we'd like to mention. We have Clarion Gaming. ICE registration is now open.
It is. Register. Start booking your meetings now, people. Don't leave it to the last minute.
Fenton's going. And we have Be Wise Media.
We do.
Who are specialists in, there's a lot of strings to that bow. But loosely media buying, specialist media buying. So if you're in the sports betting market and you need some specialist content, they have exclusive outlets and they're very, very nice people. Also, Sebastian recommended on this podcast, he recommended the show Afterlife to me, and I finished watching it a couple of days ago.
Is it good?
It's excellent. It's really, I was so surprised.
What's it on?
Netflix. It's Ricky Gervais, basically as a man who's lost his wife and basically wants everybody to fuck off and tells them to. And I mean, and that's pretty much it. But it covers a lot. And I genuinely thought, particularly in the first two series, there were aspects of it that I emailed Sebastian and I said, look, I really feel like this is actually helping me to mourn and to make sense of all the confusion of grief. Because it takes fucking years. In fact, I tweeted Ricky Gervais to say, thanks, I appreciate your shit there. Because it's beautifully written. It doesn't always hit the spot, but it gets close enough. I mean, it's totally unique. It was a real surprise. Very nice surprise. A sensational cast around him as well. Absolutely wonderful cast. David Bradley is his dad with dementia, and Bradley's best known as the janitor in the Harry Potter films. Insanely talented actor. I mean, there was a dramatization of the making of the first episode of Doctor Who, called something in space and time, an adventure in space and time, maybe. The BBC did, and he played William Hartnell, the first Doctor. I mean, he's such a phenomenal actor, and he's brilliant in it. And his part is just heartbreakingly brilliant. And a lot of people like that. Ashley Jensen, who's wonderful in everything she's in. But the whole supporting cast is off the charts. Very, very good. and Penelope Wilton, who I will forever have a soft spot for, hot and soft, a soft spot for.
No, you're gonna have a hot spot for her forever. Okay, we get that. We
She's
know what you meant.
I mean, she's another insane talent. And she seems to get better as she gets older. She plays this lady who he bumps into on a sort of park bench in a cemetery. She's visiting her husband. He's buried next to his wife, and so they bump into each other quite a bit. And she's almost like the emotional barometer for him. But she's wonderful. Could not have cast that better. But anyway, enough of me bigging up the multi-millionaire Ricky Gervais's work. You get out there and big up our work, because we'd like to catch up with Ricky. So
this week's guest,
Tony Kelly.
Yeah.
Now Tony is a former professional footballer. His whole playing career was in the UK. Very careful to say. Well, I could say it was in Great Britain, because he played a little bit in Wales. And he lost a lot to gambling fundamentally and misbehaving. And he tells a bit of his story, but he also talks about the Red Card Gambling Support Project, doing some really excellent and really clever things. I was thinking about this last night. I was thinking about how they've identified a relatively small section of society, but a very vulnerable one in young footballers and in non-league footballers. And they're taking their education program out to football clubs. And I think it's really, really smart thing to do. Because proportionately, we are talking about a group which is significantly at greater risk than the average, I would suggest.
Look, if you're a 16-year-old making 20 grand a week, or whatever the number is, like, I know what I'd be like, and it wouldn't have ended well at all.
Yeah, same.
I
mean, Jesus, mine nearly ended badly, and I didn't have 20 grand a week.
I had 20 quid in my pocket, and I went for it.
That's pretty much how it went. 20 quid in my pocket, woke up on a fucking fishing trawler to Finland with no memory of anybody I'd been with. Good times.
Yeah.
Tony talks talks a lot about stuff that he's been doing and his journey, and it's a very interesting listen. Yeah. And he talks about his faith, which is really, really something as well, and the role that's played in it. So
he's doing some great stuff now. His company's doing a lot of training programs. They're working with a lot of football clubs, non-league football clubs. And I think it's just hire him, get him in to talk to your company. He's great.
That's the thing that comes out from Tony above all in this. He's a really good guy.
Yeah, just
that absolutely shines out of him.
Yeah.
Hire
him, get him in to talk to your company.
Do it. Book him now.
Worst case scenario, you're going to get some great football stories.
Seriously, we had a couple. Anyway, meet Tony Kelly, and in the meantime, have a great Christmas if you celebrate Christmas, and if you don't, I hope you enjoy some really lovely time off, and peace and love, but not just this time of year. Peace and love all year round.
Indeed.
We're joined by this week's guest. It's not, as Fintan may have led people to believe, Santa Claus, although you could describe this as our Christmas episode. It's the next best thing to Santa, and if you haven't met him, then, well, it's your tough shit, isn't it? We're joined by Tony Kelly of the Red Card Gambling Support Project. Now, Tony, Tony and I were chatting on LinkedIn, and he was telling me a bit about himself and his life, his career, and all that jazz. And I thought, you know what, this would be quite interesting on the podcast. So here we are. Tony Kelly, welcome.
Thank you very much, John. Good to see you and your sidekick, Fintan.
Fintan, I'm going to refer to you as my sidekick from here on.
I'm the Robin to your Batman, John.
Yes, yeah.
I always thought there was something a bit dodgy about the whole Robin thing.
taking in the orphan, letting them live in the big mansion, dressing them up in tights, that kind of thing.
No, that part I thought was fine. It's that he was allowed to drive.
Okay.
Clearly too young.
Well, all the rules are already breaking. What's a bit of unlicensed driving at that point?
I guess that's fair, but there's no way they've got insurance. I mean, for a start, whose name is the policy in? There's your secret cover blown straight away, right?
Do you think there was many claims of insurance against Batman? Could you imagine ringing the Aviva and going, "Hey, Batman just crashed through my car while beating up the Joker. I need a new wing mirror."
Well, I tell you what, I lost the wing mirror off the old Seat Ibiza, and it cost me the best part of 220 quid to get it put back on. So would I stop? Yes, I would. I'd be put that arch criminal down, get your license, get over here. And later, when they were picking my teeth out of my brain in hospital, I'd say, "Who was that masked man?" But anyway, Tony, welcome.
Yes, mate.
So, what's your background, Tony? Give us a bit of who is Tony Kelly?
Good question. Background is professional football, really. So if we go back to, say, school days, all those millions of young kids that want to aspire to be footballers, I was fortunate enough to get an opportunity at 16, leaving school, going to Bristol City. But the flip side of that is that there's two sides to that little period of 18 months, 16 to 17 and a half. One is I became the youngest player to play for Bristol City's first team at 16, 244 days. So obviously, future was bright. And then two, by the time I was 17 and a half, Terry Cooper, ex-England, Leeds, was kicking me out the door. So my bright future had vanished within 18 months because obviously I started to do very, very, very naughty things. When you're living as a scholar, they call them scholars now, but an apprentice, moving from Coventry to Bristol, I'm living in lodgings with Rose and her husband, great couple, but they're obviously connected to the football club and they report to the football club on a daily basis how you're behaving as a 16, 17-year-old. So regardless of the fact that I'm in the first team at such a young age, I'm still going out with senior pros who are 22 and 23 and coming in at 3 a.m. thinking I've made it. So that's where I went wrong.
You're on mute, John.
You're on mute. Oh, let's keep him on mute.
No, I'm not. That was your ears.
Yeah. Oh, you're back. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
I can hear you.
Oh, yeah. That's okay.
Gotcha.
But it was mad period. Yeah, mad period that was.
But how long was your career?
So then I turned pro at 22. Obviously, fortunate to get a second opportunity when I signed for Stoke. So then 8 years as a pro, yeah. So again, finished early at 30, 6-7 years too early, which for reasons we could go through.
Well, maybe we should get into that. So so you started your sort of your misbehavior,
yeah,
fairly young.
Yeah.
What was the starting point of that? Was it a bit of drinking? Was it cards on the coach? What do you think was the sort of the starting point of things going tits up?
Yeah, I just think I got carried away with the whole, professional football environment, so going out to nightclubs with senior pros and then having girls, I played for Bristol City and all that kind of stuff. I'm 16, 17-year-old, I'm influenced by all that, got carried away, attitude, and obviously go in training, probably not trying as hard, thinking that I've already made it. And you've got to remember, I haven't even got a professional contract yet. So I think the whole thing and the whole adulation of and the environment of professional football, the crowds, meeting girls, telling friends back home in Coventry what I'm up to. So put all that together. Yeah, it's all down to attitude. Basically, I didn't have the right attitude at the time.
But you've already brought up something really important there, particularly in young athletes. and that is that it is an existence of great extremes, and it's one of great structure to an extent. So what you have is you have people who have they know exactly when they're training, they know theoretically when they're recovering, they know, and you have a lot of free time as well compared to the average job. Plus, when you factor in appearing in a football match and you've got 20,000 plus people cheering for you or screaming for your blood, those are huge extremes, and I would imagine it's a very difficult thing to prepare somebody for, but also later when you stop playing to prepare somebody for the absence of.
Yeah. And I think I've spoke to lots of different people in sports, not just professional football, but in sport in general, and you'll find that many will go down a different pathway when they've finished their professional career, whatever sport it is. But obviously, we're touching on footballers, and I'm no different. I was the same, but obviously the gambling addiction took over. But there is a void that's left. When you're so used to doing something. Because I remember coming to my last contract at Leyton Orient when Barry Hearn bought the club, and I just remember thinking to myself, this could be the last contract. But thoughts going through my head, what am I going to do next? I had no idea what the future held. Didn't have any coaching badges or anything like that. So I was just thinking in my head, what am I going to do next? And it's a scary thought because you've been so used for 8 years of going to train every day and playing in front of thousands of people and all that kind of stuff that comes with being a professional footballer. And all of a sudden, you're going to wake up one morning, which I did, and all of a sudden, I'm not a professional footballer anymore. What am I going to do? So it is a scary thought, and it is a scary situation to be in for a lot of ex-sports people. Yeah, definitely.
How old are you now?
I'm obviously, I know, I look 41, 42, I know, and I'm 57. I know, you can see the shopping phase. I know, I can see it. I know.
I was just assuming I was the oldest person here. Certainly not.
But I do, look after myself and that, and so hopefully going for a long time.
When did you? And I know we're jumping around in your timeline quite a lot here.
Yeah.
When did you get your shit together?
Good question.
What was the catalyst for that? Because this is something I always find really interesting.
There's two parts. There's two situations where, so I suppose you could sort of say life changing or catalyst or thinking, right, there is future for me. And one is very personal, and whoever's listening, I respect everyone's religions and faith. But there was a situation that happened in 2010 regarding, regaining my faith in terms of Christianity. So I don't know if you want to hear that little story.
Bring it.
So I was, as I said, when I finished football, I didn't know what I was going to do. So in 2000, probably a year after football, I managed to get a job at Network Rail. So I was working on the railway, signalman, and I got a job at Network Rail. Good job, well paid. And then one day on a Sunday, I was in a signal box where, an isolated line, mainly freight trains, very quiet Sunday, and I had a knock on my signal box door. Old gentleman there in his 50s, didn't recognise him, and this was in 2010. So I've been at Network Rail 10 years, and he said to me that he's the local Network Rail chaplain. So I said to him, well, I've been here 10 years and I've never had a visit from a Network Rail chaplain, so I don't know what this is about. And he said, well, your signal box has come up with a regional visit. Again, never had nothing like that. So I obviously asked for ID, showed me his ID, and he came into the signal box with his ID and with a brand new Bible. Now, this was the same year that I was just discharged with my £192,000 bankruptcy file, still going through the gambling addiction and just breaking up with a missus of 20 years. So my life was basically a mess. And we sat down for 2 hours and he wrote out a prayer, which I now know is a salvation prayer, which I kept to this day. And it wasn't a case of that when he left after those 2 hours. We talked about where I am. We talked about the future. We talked about regaining faith. We talked about bringing God into my life, all those things. But when he left, things didn't change overnight or anything like that. But things slowly, gradually changed. And I started to regain my faith and have a bit more connection with my faith, and started to read more scriptures and started to go to the church. And so, yeah, then 3 years later, this is what I mean about it's a gradual thing. 3 years later, I had this opportunity to write my first book. And when I wrote red card with a biro and A4 paper, no computer, no ghostwriting, none of that nonsense, A4 paper and a biro in 2013, it got published. And the first thing I'd done, you said about changing a catalyst. The first thing I'd done was go on BBC Breakfast in 2014 to go public to the nation. And that was the big thing. That was the big thing for me, because there's so many friends and family that didn't really know the extent of my gambling addiction and what I've been through. So telling, I don't know how, I do know now how, but at the time I don't know how I had the strength and courage to go on national TV and tell my story, but that's what I did. And after that, the feedback from that and how it resonated with so many people was just incredible. And so in terms of God put me on a new journey, that's when things just, all kinds of doors started opening up. My first ever talk was in a local church. I was in a local church 2 weeks ago, sharing my story in Wales. So it's become part of my recovery journey, my regained faith, culminating in getting baptised on June the 7th, 2017 in Enfield. So, as I said, it's a personal thing, and everyone's, has their own things, whether it's spirituality, whether it's a higher power, whatever is comfortable and helps people. That's what's really, really, really has helped me in terms of a belief, in terms of why I am where I am, why I had to go through what I had to go through, and the new pathway that I'm on this new journey in life.
Whereabouts in Wales were you?
Brecon.
Oh, it's just down the road from me.
So I was waiting for him to laugh then.
No, it's like 40. Well, it's probably 45 minutes. I mean, it's only about 30 miles. Yeah, but they're not kind roads.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
one tractor and you're an hour away.
Yeah. Brecon Ellen Church. I was there 3 weeks ago. Yeah, it's brilliant. So cool. Obviously, because of my story, I'll sometimes get calls from churches to share my story because it's connected to my part of my journey.
Well, I think so. I'm not a religious person at all, but I'm also not scathing of those that are, because the one thing that I have learned in my life that I think is probably the only part of my brain that you could count as having wisdom is the recognition of the importance of faith in something. The importance of faith, and it can be in anything. It can be in your dog. Yeah. But as animals, we need to have belief in something outside of ourselves. And actually, I do believe that it's a little bit like, in a way, I'm not saying this is a precise analogy, it's a little bit like accountability almost. And something recognizing that you are here and you're important, and you're important to them. And I think faith is, to us as animals, I think it's an unbelievably important thing. And I think with the erosion, largely of the church as a powerful social force in the way that it was just 50 years ago.
Yeah.
I think that the vacuum has been filled by social media. And that's partly why it's so depressing to go outside and actually see people.
Yeah, social media changed the world anyway. But I get what you're saying, because I've spoken to people that are more spiritual. I've spoken to people, whatever that higher power is, even with gambling addiction, even with guys, a couple of our team members recovered through GA, and they have a sort of religious element to their 12-step program. Yeah. So you can see where I'm coming from.
I've always found that to be, to me, and I think it's actually in the American AA. I'm not sure if it's in the British one. I've always found there to be a bit of a dichotomy there between kind of giving yourself up to forgiveness to a higher power,
Mm-hmm.
while at the same time taking accountability for all of your fuck ups. To me, that's two sides of entirely
Yeah.
different coins. So it's saying, yeah,
Yeah.
you got to give it up to a higher power because as a higher power, it's not your fault. On the other hand, it's all your fault.
Yeah.
I like the
And then
accountability side of it. I
yeah.
think that's super important. It's super important to be able to recognize. And that's like, I mean, anybody saying, here's what I am, here's what I've done, and doing it on national TV like you did.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's hard on a one-to-one level. But
Exactly
to
what you just said then about the
sorry,
two sides to accountability and you fucked up is similar on a Christian level would be repentance in terms of, yeah, I know I've done certain things wrong in my life, but, I'm repenting now and asking forgiveness and then moving on.
are you familiar with the work of Bill Hicks, Tony?
No, I should be probably.
He was a wonderful comedian, died altogether too young, and I think he was probably targeted by God to get him off the earth because he was just too funny. And he had a wonderful line in one of his routines. He was talking about doing a gig in Texas, and he did a little. It's quite a short bit of a routine about there is no way Jesus is going to come back while everybody's still wearing crosses, because do you really think he wants to be reminded of that? Then he said, and this guy came up to me after this gig in Texas, and he said, "Hey, buddy, we don't like what you said. We're Christians." So I said, "Forgive me." Which I like Bill Hicks quite a lot, and that was just in my head. So one of the things that you and I talked about before Fintan turned up, Fintan
Yeah.
was late. Anybody that's listening, one of the things that we were talking about has just come up there, which is accountability, and
Yeah.
I think this is really interesting. I know it's something that you're quite passionate about in your work now. One of the things I've organised a couple of RG things and trying to sort of take a slightly different view of RG because it's not working as it
RG.
stands.
Yeah.
RG is the industry expression for responsible gambling,
Oh, okay.
supposedly player protection, etc.
Yeah, all that, yeah.
And it's I think it's very flawed, to put it politely. There are some great people doing great work. Don't get me wrong. But the standard messages, the one size fits all nature, and all of that jazz. Considering the way technology works today, do you know what I mean? We're 10 years behind where we should be, if not more. Anyway, right?
Yeah.
So accountability. Like I've seen so many. We're in such a polar argument that especially when you see it on social media, it's like gambling industry bad, people harmed by gambling good. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that there haven't been some awful things done by parties in the industry. Because, I mean, there have been, and they're well documented.
Yeah.
Often these things are done out of ignorance or stupidity or neglect. Let me put it this way. They're not generally done out of malice. That doesn't make it right. But it's not some evil, Dr. No-style figure stroking a white cat, spinning his chair around going, take him for that extra £50. There's not this... The industry isn't organised enough to do that, for one thing.
Not clever enough either.
It's like the behind-the-scenes software of all this. It's like it's not some mega slick thing. It's just held together by sellotape and probably a machine running Windows Vista and an old version of Excel that doesn't exist anymore. But anyway, getting sidetracked, right? So within this polar argument, it's always the industry's fault, and there's a hugely blurred line between areas of responsibility. And one of the issues is, where does the industry's responsibility to the player begin and end? And as somebody who has, pretty significant lived harm, and who is working to help people now, where what do you think about that line? I mean, what do you think about what I'm putting forward there? So what I'm saying makes sense.
Yeah, because there's two sides to the story. So when we talk about the gambling industry and the regulator and the government, obviously have a massive part to play. We've just had the Gambling Act review, as you're probably aware, and we're still waiting for the outcomes of those consultations. But one of the big things for me, from a personal point of view, from my journey, why I speak openly on social media about accountability and responsibility. When I hear of ex gamblers going back 25 years to try and get compensation from an operator that ruined their life, or whatever, is that the amount of times that I was told by not just family members, but by friends, by work colleagues, the amount of, could be, I don't know, 50, 60 times, be careful with your gambling, cut down, stop, blah, blah. The amount of times, and obviously, you can only be told so many times before it sinks in. And it didn't sink in with me. And I know it's an addiction, I get that, yeah, but me personally, and also thinking about all the people that I let down. So all the people that I borrowed money from and never paid back and promised to and all that. So all the impact from other people around me that suffered as well. So I have to think about that as well. So I personally have to, in my mind, take some responsibility for what happened. Yes, obviously the operators, they have certain practices, etc. If we talk about intervention from operators, which is the big thing for me, obviously never had no intervention, never had no phone call, never had no email or anything like that. And this is moving more into the online space now, where operators are getting huge fines for, failing their license conditions. So that side of it, I get, because operators have to be show more social responsibility in terms of intervention when people are spending X amount of money online and they don't get that. Red flags there. They're spending X amount, they don't get the phone call, they don't get the email, they get no intervention whatsoever, because obviously they want your money. So, that's where there's two sides of it in terms of how the operators practice and us as individuals being a little bit more responsible for our own gambling.
And I have to agree with that, because the right answer usually is something in the middle, right? So everybody needs to do better. And obviously there's always inconsistencies in that. I get,
Yeah.
But I do agree that it's the typically the right answer is, look, I need to take more responsibility, and they could have done a better job as well, and here we are. But that's really, how would you put it? You've clearly been through a big journey to get to that point, because I've been sitting here thinking, like, if I was 16, professional footballer, made the first team, then lost it within a year, like, the fact you're alive, your world must have just crashed.
And that's just, I know we just sidetrack a little bit, but going on what Fintan just said, I've had many people, because I've not worked with, but collaborated with and talked with Gambling with Lives, a charity who's set up by the parents who had their sons committed suicide through gambling. And when I look back of what I've lost, the two houses, the £192,000 bank withdrawal, the 20-year love of my life, eventually had enough of the lies and deceit, just everything that to me, the mental health issues, finishing football 7 years earlier, sporadic form, everything. And then I think to myself, how did I not get to that point of no return? And that's why, when you say that, Fintan, I think, but I don't know what feeling suicidal or wanting to end your life feels like. And again, I'm going to go back to my religion. It wasn't meant to be for me. God had other plans for me.
Obviously, suicide's but like just massive. I was thinking myself, my son's 12, so like in 4 years' time he's 16, right? And he's a good kid, but he's an idiot, right? And you'd be like, if you give like 16-year-olds, you're now surrounded by adults. The adults are going to a nightclub. You want to tag along because this is the done thing.
Yeah.
You think you've got the world figured out because you're 16. Of course, like as does every 16-year-old. Without a pocket full of cash. Just that whole situation is, and I'm assuming professional football has kind of evolved a bit where there's more structure and safeguards and protection, because effectively you were a kid.
Yeah.
But like, is there more in play? Like,
Yeah.
because you do hear stories of like
Well, I know
bored
exactly what you mean.
footballers with too much money, right?
Yeah, and when I think about how gambling addiction was in the 90s to where we are now in terms of safeguarding, protection of players, etc. The thing that stands out for me going through the games, because I signed for Stoke in 1990, and 8 years as a pro. So whether it was at Stoke or whether it was at Bury or Leyton Orient or Cardiff or Hull, wherever I was, away journeys are similar now. Yeah, the big clubs will fly, yeah, but generally it's a coach journey. And in the 90s, and you'll hear ex-players say this, I've met loads of them on LinkedIn, the card schools were ridiculous at the back of the coach. But what's more ridiculous, apart from players losing money, and then you've got to go out and play in front of 20,000, so I don't know how your mental state is, but I always suffer with that. But what stood out for me is the fact that, for argument's sake, God bless him, Alan Ball, whoever it is, whatever managers were around, they would be coming down to the back of the coach. Directors would be coming down, chairman would be coming down and joining in the 3-card Brad card schools. And that's what I think to myself, how the hell did that happen? But that's how normal it was. That's how normal.
It's the culture.
Yeah, it was a gambling culture within football. They loved it. Yeah, so you got people of in a position of authority, managers and chairman, directors of football clubs that are encouraging and gambling with you. Not a word said. Not a word said at all. But imagine that today. It would never happen. So it has changed, yeah, in that sense.
I think we can thank Arsene Wenger for some of that. Because actually, look at the club that he came into. Arsenal, massive drinking culture, massive gambling culture.
Yeah.
And the lives that, all right, these weren't lives that were immediately straightened out by him turning up, but they all pretty much got there in the end.
Yeah.
And they were right at the top end of that particular scale.
Yeah.
Plus, he made them less dull to watch. But that's by the by. So, Tony, as a player, who was the best player you played against?
He was young. He was young at the time. When we played Liverpool in 1990 at Anfield. Steve McManaman, but he was only 18 on the night, but he was, he tore us to shreds anyway. But obviously went on to become a great player. So as a young player, him on a more sort of senior level, played against. Did you say?
Well, you're the one with the stories.
Yeah, against. I'll go for a fullback because obviously a lot of the time I was right wing, and I sort of had a wake up call. Playing for Stoke against West Ham. What's Alton Park? I was going to say what West Ham ground is. Alton Park. And I had a wake-up call because, I thought I was doing okay. You know what I mean? But then I played, against his fullback. And he just basically just kicked me to shreds. Strong.
Julian Dix, was it?
Yeah.
But I tell you what.
Because I was still a young pro, but he was just like, I just think these fucking guys is an animal, just fucking kicking all over the shop. Yeah.
But for all of his rough edges,
yeah, good player.
He was an his left foot from a dead ball was absolutely sublime.
Yeah. So yeah, he was a quality player as a fullback. So and in my team at Stoke, he went to sign for Chelsea. I think he got the record of 9 consecutive Premier League goals, and that was beaten by someone. 9 consecutive games, 9 Premier League goals, and that was Mark Stein.
Great. I remember him well. That was what I think of as my period for Chelsea.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. They had record times like Mark Stein, John Spencer up front. It's like your strikers might get 8 goals a season. They were in my head the good old days. Where a mid-table finish and a fantastic run in the cup was usually a really, really good season.
So a similar season you'll have then, mid-table finish, similar this season,
yeah. Thanks for that.
Yeah, that's right.
Cheers. It's just everything cost a bit more to get there this time.
Yeah.
The signs are promising, though. There's some mad skills in that side. You wait and see.
I can't work Chelsea out anyway. They've got loads of talent, loads of quality players, but I don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, I think they got rid of too many of the club's sort of stabilising influences too quickly. And they're essentially playing with sort of one leader on the pitch at the moment, and that's Thiago Silva.
Yeah.
Which is an awful lot of responsibility put on a 39-year-old in the fastest league in the world.
See,
But
there's an example of discipline and dedication. Going back to my 16, I didn't have, and there he is, 39, still playing the top flight. Incredible.
he's been excellent in every country he's played in, but in a really quiet way. And actually, I don't know if do you read any football books?
Only there's one called Red Card. I bet you can win.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's a good story.
Sounds
Sure,
great.
it's great. Do we know who wrote it?
Is it available from all good bookshops?
Yeah.
You're allowed to promote your stuff, mate. It's fine.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I remember Thiago Silva being mentioned in Zlatan Ibrahimovic's first autobiography, I think.
Yeah.
And I love a bit of Zlatan.
That would be, now you said that would be an interesting book to read, I think, Zlatan.
Yeah, I think he's gravely misunderstood. I think he's basically joking almost all the time.
Yeah.
But actually, what I think you've got there, right? And Fintan, I can relate this to ultra running, so bear with me. What I think you see in a player like Zlatan, so Zlatan was still playing top flight football in Italy at 40, 41, right? He's just retired. I mean, that doesn't happen, not in the modern game. What I think you see in a player like that is the benefits of other sports, because he was a passionate kickboxer from when he was a teenager.
Karate or something like that, yeah.
But to a very high level, and he carried on his training and his studies the whole time. And it gives, so running is largely one direction.
Yeah.
Footballers get a bit more hip mobility and strength and all that jazz, and a lot of training is built around that. But still, that guy, he's like a rock, his core strength and all of that. He's unreal. He's an absolute monster on the pitch. And a guy that big should not have that kind of touch. And, he was something else.
Yeah.
But if you look at ultra running, Fintan, I've always said Dean Karnassis, I know he gets dissed a lot for being a great self-publicist, but he had a very long career at the top end of ultra running. And I reckon that's because he was a passionate windsurfer. Because you look at the guy, in most photos, he's just wearing a pair of shorts and he is ripped. He's still ripped.
Shredded.
And, it just makes you stronger.
That's the other thing about fitness. When you finish football, you sort of lose. A lot of players, you've seen players like, for example, Razor Ruddock and others that are just, look a mess, yeah. Because you do lose the motivation to train. You've been training every day and all of a sudden you haven't got anything to train for.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, and it also, if you've had to retire through injury as well, it's going to be a factor, because if you're not having to do the rehab, are you going to? I remember, Fintan, obviously you're not going to be aware of this, but there was a young player at Ajax several years ago when they had an amazing group of kids. And they were selling two of the kids at the same time. One was Frankie de Jong, who went to Barcelona.
Yeah.
Still can't believe no English clubs bought him. I think he's just amazing. And the other one is Matthias de Ligt, who is now at Bayern Munich.
Your Dutch pronunciation's fantastic, John.
Yeah.
Thanks.
That's really
basically the trick is to pretend you're Sean Connery.
I live in Amsterdam, Tony, and my Dutch is appalling. That's the joke. It's way better than mine.
but I read something. I think it might. Do you know, this might have been in the Upshot, Fintan. I read something that said that I think it might have been Manchester United were looking at De Ligt, and this is when they bought Maguire instead. Now I love De Ligt. I think he's an absolutely wonderful player, and he would be brilliant in England. He's that kind of player where he's 2 steps ahead, and as a central defender, it's priceless. And they didn't buy him because apparently they looked at his dad, and his dad was really, really fat. And they thought that managing his weight was going to be a constant battle, so they didn't buy him. They bought Harry Maguire instead, who went on to famously become their fifth choice central defender out of 4.
Poor Harry, man. Poor Harry. He has some stick in it.
Yeah, all credit to him. He keeps bouncing back. That guy's mental strength must be different planet. And he's never let England down. I don't care what anybody says. I mean, I'm not a particular fan of his, but in an England shirt, he's there. He turns up every time.
And you say about mental strength, and you have to have one of the things that what you have in professional football dressing room is you have to have mental strength, because the banter and getting the piss ripped out of you, and then if you're having a bad time on the pitch, imagine. I watched a game a few weeks ago where Harry, every time he touched the ball, the crowd were booing, and I thought, you've got to have mental strength to go through some shit from some supporters,
or very bad hearing.
Yeah.
Maybe he's blessed. So, Tony, tell us what you're doing now. Tell us about Red Card Gambling Support Project. Bring it.
So, 2000, as I said, when the book came out, Red Card, the first one, 2014, then I started to realise I'm not alone here. So I thought, right, what can we do now? And this is where I had no plans for the future. I didn't know what I was going to do. So my sister said, let you try and set up something. You can incorporate a company. I didn't have a clue. You'll be surprised to know that I have no degrees or A-levels and nothing like that. So I set up Red Card Gambling Support Project as a founder. It was quite easy to incorporate it as a CIC. And then we had a lot of support. Lots of people wanted to get involved. Obviously, getting the board together and then deciding what we want to do. So this goes back to where we are now in terms of there's loads of research out there, there's loads of treatment providers, etc., but there is not enough education awareness. So that's where I wanted to go. So we started 2015, going back to faith and belief, going for funding, getting declined, not having, got to get a bit established. And so obviously my faith was saying, look, this is what you're meant to do, keep going, and eventually these doors will open. And then we started to get funding, I'd say, from about 2017. And our main sort of priority remit, as it were, is to go out there in all kinds of organisations, all kinds of agencies and companies to educate people on gambling-related harm. So we've been all around the country. We're somewhere different every week. And that could be young people, it could be adults, it could be charities, mental health charities, drugs and alcohol charities, schools, colleges, football clubs, everywhere. We go everywhere. So that's what we do now. We have funding from various sources, and we talked about the industry earlier, and there's a little bit of conflict within the whole gambling space about taking money from operators. So the operators have a remit to give donations to charities. There's a thing called a REP list, regulated settlements list. So all those big fines, the 20 millions and all that these operators get fined, goes into a pot called regulated settlements. Agencies can then go to that pot through the Gambling Commission and apply for a project, and it'll be funded by an operator. So I've got to give them a little bit of tip, because we've got a brilliant non-league football project running at the moment, which is absolutely amazing. And we wouldn't be able to run that project without that funding from that particular operator. So on that side, we've got to give them a little bit of a tick. Nice. And it's great, because obviously one of the things that I just want to tell you a quick story about the football industry. So it would have been about 4 years ago. People kept saying to me, Red Card are here, Red Card are there, delivering workshops, etc. Why are you, as an ex-footballer, why are you not working with the FA? And I goes, well, I've tried working with the FA. And we had a meeting in London with Gordon Taylor, the ex-PFA chairman. He's put on the back of the first book, Red Card, it's got kind donation from PFA, because he gave us £1,000 to help with the publication. And he's known my story, because I took a few grand from the Benevolent Fund when I was in debt throughout my career, and obviously as chairman of the PFA, you go to the PFA and they help you. So he knows all about my story. And he's had a gambling addiction himself. So it all made sense. Get Red Card and Tony to go into the scholars, the 92 clubs, But when we had this video link in London with him and Mickey Bennett, the health welfare officer, and a couple of directors, they just kept going on about Sporting Chance Clinic. Oh, we've got Sporting Chance Clinic. You know, they're doing a bit on the gambling now, so we don't really need anyone else. All that, and they gave us a £5,000 check and said go away, basically. So I've always known that the professional football industry do not want to really expose gambling too much. I know how rife it is in professional football. I worked at Tottenham's I told you I did lots of things. I worked at Tottenham's training ground for 2 years as a liaison officer when Tim Sherwood and Les Ferdinand were running in the 23s. And I remember in the canteen and they were saying to me, oh, Tony's fucking rife here, but we can't, they're saying to me they can't mention names, but he said it's absolutely rife. I goes, yeah, I'm not surprised. And that'll be with lots of football clubs, but the FA don't want to expose it. There's that conflict of interest with gambling sponsorship with football clubs as well. So we thought, you know what, we forget the fucking football, professional football. I was in non-league football from 18 to 22 with Enfield, St Albans City, Nuneaton Borough, and Racing Club Warwick. So I know how non-league football is. I know I was gambling a lot then. I know that we had our card scores and a coach. I know that, you know, we're talking about our bets in the bar afterwards. Tuesday night, Thursday night training, Saturday night, after the game, all we're talking about is our football bets. And that's the case today. So I thought, let's do some research. So we sent emails out to lots of non-league clubs across the country, and the feedback was amazing because chairmen and academy managers were just saying to us, look, you know, our young lads are gambling is rife on their apps. All they talk about is football bets after the game in the bar, afterwards on a Tuesday and Thursday training, missing training, not focusing, poor performance, all that stuff going on. So a lot of clubs have jumped on it. We're on to our 22nd non-league club within about 4 months, I think. We're going across the country for the next 2 years. And it's amazing, brilliant project. So
that's really great.
Yeah, and
just so I understand.
Yeah.
That's really no. I think that's super. I think you know everybody should do it. I think the gambling awareness training is actually phenomenal because you walk away and you start seeing the patterns in other parts of your life as well. So it's a really just on a very general, like even if you don't gamble, it's actually a really just good awareness training of maybe I do a bit too much shopping online.
Yeah.
You know, just like I know it sounds stupid, and I'm not trying to trivialize it, but it just really makes you like, oh, actually, I'm chasing it in other ways, and I think that's a huge thing. Just out of curiosity, just so I understand how it works. So, for you to work with a football club, you would need permission from the PFA, or you could work with a club directly.
A professional football club.
Yeah.
We will just get calls to go in to deliver a workshop to their academy players. That will generally how it works. I think Luton have just been in touch with us, so they might be going to Luton shortly. They've been in touch with us, and I think Brentford. But there's not a massive appetite for someone like Red Card to go into these 92 professional football clubs. If there was, we'd be getting emails left, right, and centre. So what we're getting it from non-league clubs, because I just think that the professional clubs, I don't know what it is. There's some kind of barrier why they're not reaching out when it's there. The education awareness is free. It's there for their players, their young players. Young players at 18 are going to be on £5,000 a week in the Championship. So, you know, and they're going to have their same mate. They're going to have their same mates that they go down to the pub with and bet with and casino and all that kind of stuff. So it's massive for young players. So I'm not sure what the FA do. If you spoke to whoever's fucking chairman of the FA, I don't know what they're doing about gambling addiction with professional football. It'll be interesting to see what they actually say. Yeah,
because you would think that if you take like one of the top flight clubs, right? They're spending squillions of pounds on players and physio and nutrition and training grounds and like just the whole ecosystem around the players. They're probably owned by people from countries where gambling's illegal. Yeah, but that's a different thing, right? Yeah. So, but you would think the mental health and, you know, if somebody's just walking on the pitch who's just lost way more money than they should have gambling, like it doesn't matter how good the chefs are in the kitchen, his mind's not going to be on the game, right? Yeah. And you would think just as if there's another one, like the Team Sky, the cycling team talk about like the 1% marginal gains and stuff. Yeah. If there's something where we can catch the kids young, educate them, guide them in the right way, we can just build this great machine for winning trophies. And it feels like such a no-brainer of why infrastructure wouldn't be in place for this.
Yeah, because I think player welfare has to be at the head of any professional football club, and early intervention is key because, and these guys are, like you say, some of these 18-year, 19-year-olds are bought for fucking 30, 40 million. So they're an economy, they're a product for that football club, they're an asset to that football club. So if you've got a 19-year-old that you've just spent 40 million on and then he gets involved in gambling addiction, then you've lost a 40 million player.
But there is no other industry in the world, though, that would get away with treating people the way that young athletes are treated. Not a chance. The psychological hammering, Fintan touched on it really nicely when he was saying about how you must have been completely crushed. The tiny proportion of kids that get contracts, even scholarship contracts, and the tiny proportion of those that get professional contracts.
Very small, yeah.
Thousands and thousands and thousands of kids are cast aside at 14, 15, 16. And they're just gone. That's it. There's no support. There's just, right, you lot fuck off over there. We're going to concentrate on the next load into the mincer.
Yeah.
That meat grinder, like we've all met guys, I had trials once. Kind of thing, right? And it's still a really, right, but it's still a big part, like the disappointment decades later of what could have happened.
Exactly.
It's just, like, I agree. It's huge.
I remember going to the, what they call it, the release night meeting at Tottenham when they're going to release the 16-year-olds or they're going to give them a scholarship, and fucking just obviously parents turned up and all fucking arguments breaking out, all that. Why did my son get a contract and all that? And like you say, these 16-year-olds, their dreams are just shattered. And I know because I'm a lot older, so I know a lot of guys that have got young sons and all that, various clubs in London and all that, and they've just ended up on the streets and fucking crime and shit because their dreams are shattered. So they think, fuck it.
And that structure,
they were dreaming of making those thousands of pounds, but now they're going to make it in another way.
But that structure that they had as well is gone.
Yeah,
it's like when somebody leaves the army. You know what I mean? Or somebody comes out of prison even. All the structure they knew is gone. They're lost. They're psychologically lost.
Yeah.
Their tribe is gone. Their support network is gone.
Yeah.
And that's for anybody, that's horrible.
When I got back to Coventry, 17 and a half, and obviously shamed and embarrassed, and all my mates are going, you play for the first team, what are you doing? How come they release you? If it wasn't for my sister to say, look, get out of Coventry, there's a lot of shit going on, there's no work here, come to London, come and live with me and start afresh, then I think I would have been doing what my mates were doing in Coventry in terms of crime and all that shit. So yeah, lucky I got my ass to London and started again, because like you say, for some, they won't have those opportunities and they'll just fall by the wayside and get involved in all sorts. Your
sister does sound like a bit of a legend. She's come up a few times.
Yes, and I just want to say the last thing about her. So in our workshops, we have because I'm very big on the impact of others. I'm very big on that, and we are at Red Card because I borrowed money off every single member of my family, all my 5 brothers and my sister. I'm lucky that they stayed with me and didn't discard me. So she has a 3-minute video when we get to affected others. She has a 3-minute video, and it's really powerful, where she's talking about how my gambling impacted her and her family. And there's one line where she says, I lent him X amount of money so he could save the mortgage, and yet he still goes away and gambles and loses the house. So it just gives you an insight into how, family members and friends are really impacted by someone's gambling. And that's why I'm big about this accountability thing, because you're not just talking, we're selfish as gambling addicts, but you're not just talking about us as individuals. We've got to look at a bigger picture.
Well, it's any addiction, isn't it? By its nature is selfish and destructive.
Yeah.
There's a few things that I want to go back to here. The first one is you use the term "we" a lot. So who is we within Red Card?
So I decided that we wanted to build the model on lived experience. So over a period of time, we I suppose recruited through working with the Gambling Commission as well as an advisory member, which is the Lived Experience Advisory Board, 3 years ago, for 9 months. Obviously meeting people in that group, because obviously it was advertised and that. So we have 16 members. and I took 2 of them, and then created a team where we're all lived experience. So, as an example, because it's in the public domain, so it doesn't matter. But as an example, Ben, who you'll see on the website on the team's page, he stole 370 grand from his employer over a 2-year period and went to prison for 3 years. So he done 18 months of his contract. So they're real powerful stories within my team. So we're all lived experience, and that's what I wanted to bring. So that's the red card facilitating team, and obviously we have website management directors and a few volunteers, and we've built a good solid team. And I think they're all on the same page in terms of passionate about raising awareness and educating people. And I will stress, by the way, we say at the start of every single workshop we deliver, the first line I say is just so I'm clear, everyone, we are not anti-gambling.
It's interesting. Most of the people with the most realistic and real world approach to this are not anti-gambling.
Yeah.
Despite their lived experience and despite having suffered great harms, they're not prohibitionists.
No.
Which I think
we totally understand that, you know, millions of people in the UK, or tens of thousands of people, whatever it is, enjoy a bet. We look at the social element, we look at the community element. You know, it's a really enjoyable pastime for thousands and thousands and thousands of people. And I've got friends that will never encounter gambling harm. They might go out once a month to the casino. They might go out, have a bet once every week with their friends down the pub. So we can't exclude those people that enjoy it for what it is.
My next part, you mentioned that you had gotten to know. Oh crap! His name's gone out of my head. Was it Graham Kelly? PFA
Graham.
dude.
Oh,
Graham Kelly's the referee bloke.
Yeah,
Graham.
So, I just said him, didn't I? Gordon
Ramsay. He'll do.
No. The ex PFA chairman, Gordon.
Yeah, I can't think.
Yeah, no, just
that's really bad
as well. Taylor.
Yes, thank you.
I got it.
Middle name Ramsey. What jumped into my head when you were talking about that was that actually that benevolent fund could be the perfect way into people with a problem who are professional footballers. And so if the PA were to work with a group like yourselves, then that's the knock on the door that could trigger the right questions from the right people and the right conversations at the right time.
Right. So because that benevolent fund is meant for when you finish.
Sure.
Yeah. But obviously
But you look at players like yourself.
Others. Yeah.
And I'm sure there's going to be lots of reasons why people might come into these things, right?
Yeah.
Lots of reasons why people might come in. I mean, there's all sorts of things. But you look at, fucking hell, Keith Gillespie's story.
Mm-hmm.
Fuck me. Who was that wonderful winger? He was at Manchester United. Ukrainian or Russian?
Well, not Kanchelskis, no.
Yeah, Kanchelskis lost everything.
Oh, has he got one out of the story as well?
It was quite a few years ago that his story came out. But he lost everything, Kanchelskis. And you know, that was a guy with the world at his feet.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
No pun intended. And, you know, these are players who so Gillespie and Kanchelskis was around the same time, so mid to late 1990s was their heyday. There was still more than enough money to have retired on and lived comfortably forever and ever.
Yeah,
Amen.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, if I were the PFA and I had a benevolent fund for people in hardship, then I would be using that as if you want to access this, let's have a bit of a chat, see if there's anything else we can help with.
Yeah.
And find any triggers that are in there.
And I think because it's more in the media now and more in the public domain in terms of people talking about gambling addiction, you know, that more people would probably come forward, because back then I know there's still shame and stigma attached now, but back then, there's no way people are talking. I had opportunities in Lou Macari's office, in Alan Ball's office. I had plenty of opportunities to tell, tell them what's happening. But there's no way I was going to.
Well, yeah, but that's part of the issue for an athlete. You admit weakness.
Yeah. I know.
You've just spent 10 years having that trained out of you. You're not going to say I'm having a bit of a problem.
Yeah.
Because that might cost you a place in the first team. That's going to cost you your appearance bonus. Do you know what I mean? It's just not going to happen. While those things are linked, people aren't going to come out and say, look, actually, I need a bit of time out. And we're talking about the players that aren't on 20 grand a week.
Yeah.
Who that appearance bonus is a big deal for. So we're looking at top end of the conference. We're looking at League Two, probably still League One. But anyway. But the other thing I wanted to ask, when you were working at Tottenham, how awesome is Les Ferdinand? Is he as awesome as he seems to be, or is he more awesome?
I've always, I wouldn't say not looked. I've always had a lot of respect for him, and the reason why is
who doesn't?
Yeah, is obviously he was a great player, and Newcastle days is where he's sort of my main memories of him. He's probably my age, you know what I mean? But it's main memories will stand out for me, Newcastle days, and all that. But I just think that he, on a personal level, this is again, because there's loads of issues that I sort of have opinions about. And one of them obviously is diversity and inclusion, and he seemed to have just stepped into the role or authoritative role, as a person of colour, one of the first, but just in his stride and just a great intellect and just knows exactly what he's talking about. So I respect him for all that. And hopefully, and again, whether it's women or whether it's people of colour, I'm big on diversity and inclusion. Hopefully people will get into those kind of positions that he got into, which seemingly just strolled into quite easily.
Yeah. Well, you say just strolled into. That's only how it looks from the outside, I'm sure. There's usually a lot of hard work behind things that look easy.
Yeah, definitely.
Just look at this podcast. Fucking hell. I sweat piss over this podcast. One of my favourite things about Les Ferdinand is now, Fintan, I don't expect you to know this dude that we're talking about. Okay. He was a striker, and he had a wonderful time at Newcastle playing up front with Alan Shearer. Is that he's one of the best headers of the ball I've ever seen. I mean, he was almost peerless at that time. The only player that I would equate as being about as good as him was actually Teddy Sheringham, bizarrely. But Ferdinand, I was stunned to discover this, because he was like Michael Jordan when he went up for the ball. He could just stop almost in the air and wait for the ball. And I was stunned to discover he's not even 6 foot tall. Because the height that guy could get was unreal. And I think he's 5'10", 5'11", which for a striker at that time is actually quite small. Yeah, he also did one of the best fouls I've ever seen in my life. One of the the best foul ever, Zlatan Ibrahimovic, and nobody's ever going to get close to that. Do you know the one I mean, on John Terry?
Yeah. Oh no!
I was thinking of the headbutt.
Yeah, and I was thinking about the Kung Fu, but that was Cantona. Okay. Yeah.
Zlatan, look it up. Zlatan Ibrahimovic foul John Terry. It's John Terry's not getting back up. Do you know what I mean? It's he gets an elbow in there. It's unreal. You're like, oh yeah, you kickbox.
Anyway. I've got. You better remember what you say. I'm talking about injuries. Yeah, someone who sorted me out.
What?
That's why I've got guarantee for life. These were screwed in. In 1990, they were screwed in, these 2 teeth.
Yeah.
Yeah, proper screwed in, whatever they done. I don't know what you call them. But
implants. Yeah.
Yeah, and they lasted up to a year ago, and then they started feeling loose, and then they came out, and the dentist said, we're surprised that they lasted that long. Said they done well to last that long. Yeah. And I was playing for Stoke against West Brom with Hawthorns, and went up for a header, and I'll call him Fatty now because he's a bit fat now. But remember Craig Shakespeare, Leicester manager a couple of years ago, took over.
Yeah. Sorry, yeah.
He's assistant to what's his name, Southgate for a bit, England. Yeah. Yeah, but he came across and whacked my fucking teeth out, and I had emergency surgery that night. Yeah, so Craig Shakespeare, I can have ever seen him. Yeah, anyway. Yeah.
So, right,
Yeah.
it was, I think it might even have been at QPR at the time. It's how long ago it was.
Mm.
And it was an FA Cup game. And you just saw this in the background of the shot. So all the action's in the foreground. And there's Les, and he's got a defender, and the defender's been giving him verbal all game. And it was a February tie. I remember that because it was one of those freezing fog FA Cup weekends.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember seeing him, and it, like I say, this is way in the background. Just see him put his arm around the defender, and the next thing you know, the defender's on the floor. He's put his hip across him, and he's just thrown him over his hip. It was beautiful.
That
So
was
good.
John Terry.
No, that was Les Ferdinand.
Say. Yeah, but who did he do it to?
Oh, it wasn't John Terry. This was way
gonna
before. Terry would have been at infant school at this point, I
as
think.
good as he gets, yeah, Terry, yeah, wouldn't he? Yeah.
You would
What
probably
about the
think
story?
so.
Hey, there's some naughty stories in football as well. You know, like
Oh,
John Terry and his fucking, what's his mate's name? Shagging his missus, all that shit.
Wayne Bridge.
Yeah, there's so much shit that goes on in professional football.
Yeah, I
know it goes
hated
on
that
a lot,
stuff.
but they're just loads
But
of
no,
sneaky
I
stuff.
really hated that story. And actually,
Stuff,
Bridge was a fantastic player, and he was brilliant at Chelsea. He was brilliant at Southampton, and that was pretty much where his career nosedived. Was that story coming out? And what you were saying earlier about what the dressing room is like.
Yeah.
I would imagine that would have been awful for him.
Oh, that was.
And if your captain does that, it doesn't say a lot about you. Yeah. If you're the captain and you do that shit, you don't deserve that fucking armband. And I've been a Chelsea supporter for decades. Like when we were mid-table, when we were shit, which wasn't that long ago, and we are still mid-table and shit. But you know, I see the banner in the stands, JT, captain, leader, legend. That wasn't a captain. That's not what your captain does. It's not what you do to your teammates and your friends.
Horrible. But
so
like mentally,
screw that.
He would have struggled fucking in that dressing room, yeah.
Totally. And so, you know, I'm sure the club supported him really well when they went out and then recruited the best left back in the world.
Yeah. But to be fair, I've seen I would have fucked her as well. Yeah, to be fair.
I wasn't expecting that to go there.
Googling it now.
Yeah, gentlemen, I'm a little embarrassed now. You know, I've always said women are only good for one thing: being fully rounded individuals in their own right. And so, to objectify women in this way, I'm a little embarrassed for you.
Sorry. Yeah. Yes, moving on smoothly.
I'm glad that it's something that always irritates me is it's constant criticism of the gambling industry. Gambling industry shouldn't be involved in research and funding these things, but it's all their fault and they should do something about it. But if we're not allowed to fund research and we're not allowed to fund treatment, what exactly should we be doing? That is precisely what I think the industry should be doing. But it should be probably coming into a central fund the way it kind of does. But a central fund which is chaired by academics, which is chaired by RG experts, independent people, that make sure that it goes to the best research and the best groups. Because at the moment, you know, I've spoken to some industry. I've spoken to some organisations that specialise in treatment.
Yeah.
And they've said that they're not even 5% of their referrals are coming from sort of GamCare and the big referral places. Not even 5%. That's insane.
Yeah.
So actually, what that suggests, if they're not even seeing 5% from there, if all of the commission figures are based on people coming through GamCare, etc., then those figures are completely wrong.
Wrong, yeah.
Because that suggests there's a 95% out there that's not coming through there.
Yeah. The funding side, I think, is being revamped a bit.
It really needs it.
They're thinking about having an ombudsman, like you said. Thinking about having one big part and a statutory levy, where the money is distributed evenly amongst all the charities, because there's a lot of argument that Gamble Aware get all the money and what they do with it, etc., and others are ignored. So that's all going to be changed over the next 6 months. So it's balanced and it goes to the right people and it's distributed fairly. And I'm pleased to say that from what I've heard, that 35% of the statutory levy, I think it's 100 million or 150 million, that's it's going to be, will go to education awareness. Whereas 5 years ago, it was all about treatment research. But now, education awareness is becoming, part of the priority now in terms of funding.
But if the industry isn't allowed to fund any treatment, that just puts greater stress on the health service, which is something else that they're not going to be able to cope with. It just doesn't work. The industry should have to shoulder this, and we should be pushed to find better ways to communicate. And, because actually the industry has the data. The industry has all of the access.
Has all the
The
data,
industry knows the tools, and we know how we do. You know what I mean?
And one of the things
you can't take the industry out of the conversation.
No, you can't. No, they're heavily involved and always will be. And in terms of the Gambling Act review and the consultations, one of the big things, and we're all waiting to see what comes of it in terms of the final decision, what the Gambling Commission decided, and that is, because it's a bit of a minefield and no one's got the right answer, this affordability checks. Because, there's different figures spouted around about, it might be a threshold of £1,000 for some people, but what if you earn, £50,000 a week? Who are you to tell me that I can only fucking lose £1,000? So it's I don't know how this affordability check thing is going to be implemented and what it's going to look like. Yeah,
I think that's where all the fear is coming from, is that just nobody knows.
No,
and I'm getting a little bit pissed off with the conversation, but I'm only getting pissed off with the conversation because the conversation is all what if.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, make sure we're engaging with the consultation process, make sure we're a part of the consultation process, make sure that the people that are going to be implementing this understand the practical realities of what they're talking about, why it might work, why it might not work. Because that's the other thing. The people that are making these decisions are not industry generally. And there's actually, there's different mechanisms to the back end as to how these things work, where industry input can say, well, this isn't practical because of this, but if we do this, it might work. Do you know what I mean? There's got to be a conversation, an actual two-way dialogue.
Yeah.
Because anything else is just pissing in the wind.
Yeah, this is just me personal level. I think whatever happens in terms of decisions like that, they are going to be for the benefit of the government and the operators, behind the scenes. They're going to do what suits them to, really, because there's so much money involved.
Maybe. But I'm optimistic some good can come of it. And when you look at the introduction of an ombudsman, you think, how does the gambling industry not have an ombudsman?
Yeah, I know. Many have said that. Yeah, I know.
That blows my mind. That properly blows my mind. When it came up, I was like, what do you mean we've got one? Am I? What? But apparently not. I'd like to be it, though. I'd like to have a card that just says John Bruford, Ombudsman. No contact details or anything. Hi, I'm an ombudsman.
Just kick in every door, every room you enter.
Ombudsman!
Ombudsman!
Hit the floor! Hey, you say that, so it's okay, I'm an ombudsman. What
would the main role of this is just a random question, what would the main role of an ombudsman, if he or she brought into the gambling industry to fucking shake it up and whatever, what would be their main role?
Well, I think that right now, an awful lot of unhappy people think they can only turn to the Gambling Commission, when in fact they've got fuck all to do with the Gambling Commission. Like when that oh shit, what's it called? What was the football was it the Football Index? Fintan?
Yeah,
Football Index.
Yeah.
So you still see it, it's all over social media still now. People are going to the Gambling Commission and saying, oh, why aren't you doing something about this? It's not theirs to look after. It's quite literally not under their remit.
Yeah.
But it's the kind of thing where an ombudsman could rule. And so, a place where people can go if they're having a hard time. And I think it might actually lead. You see a lot about gamblers saying, "Oh, I got shut out when I started winning.
Yeah, well, that, yeah.
They stopped taking my bets because they're not making money off me, etc., etc." And it's for a lot of people, it doesn't feel like a level playing field. And I feel like that's going to be a conversation there. So you might actually see some practices change slightly. You might see some enforced changes, and I think it might ultimately, probably should ultimately lead to almost a customer influenced input into future legislation, because you'll see where the pain points are, and you'll see, an ombudsman should be able to say dispassionately, well, this is why this happens.
Yeah.
This is why it's shit. This is what we can change.
And I think that from a lot of people I've spoken, there's a long process and detailed, long, stressful process when we talk about redressing and trying to get money back that should be yours or whatever. It's a long process with the Gambling Commission. So an ombudsman, that would be.
It's bad enough when you appeal to Birmingham Town Council. So God knows what it'd be like trying to talk to, it just doesn't bear thinking about. Yeah. Fintan, further to your, let me throw him an ombudsman. That does remind me of a story. And I know I've told you this one, Fintan, but I haven't told Tony. Okay?
It's okay, go for it.
And anybody that's listening, I'm sorry, I know I've told this story before, but I'm going for it because it's also a Christmas story. Oh, shit. I hope you're not going to get offended by this, Tony, because it does involve a church.
All right, okay, yeah.
But no problem. Sorry?
I forgive you.
God bless America.
Yes.
So I saw a chap I've known for a long time, and he said, John, he said, have you heard any gossip about my son? I said, well, nobody tells me any gossip because I don't really listen to it, and I usually tell him to fuck off. So I was just wondering, but if anybody says anything to you, could you give me a shout? I'm like, yeah. It's a bit of an odd thing to just come up and say. And he's all right. I'll tell you what happened. He said, my son was back home for the Christmas holiday, and he met up with a young woman he knows, and they had a few beers while they were out and about, and they got a little bit frisky, so they went and found somewhere quiet, and this is Christmas Eve actually, and they were enjoying themselves, and everything was going swimmingly until the police arrived, because they'd decided that their quiet spot was going to be the roof of St. Lawrence's Church in Ludlow, and of course they were having midnight mass on Christmas Eve. So there's these two having a fine old time on the roof, because there was scaffolding because it was being repaired. St. Lawrence's Church is magnificent. It's the largest parish church in Europe. It's like a cathedral-sized church in this little town. So they climbed up the scaffolding and were enjoying themselves on the roof. And the coppers turn up, and my mate's son, he goes to the edge of the scaffolding to see what's going on, looks down, sees the police, and apparently he said, "It's all right, lads, I'm a scaffolder."
Tony's waiting for the punchline.
Yeah, I was just about to say, you have to get into it. There's another bit, but no, there isn't another bit. All right, okay.
No, that's it. That's all he's got. That's all he's got.
Yeah.
It's one of those. It's one of those stories where, like, I at stressful times in my life, I use that line. I mean, it's all right, lads. I'm a scaffolder.
Yeah.
It's like a mantra for me.
Yeah.
It's all right. You're a scaffolder. You're a scaffolder. You're a scaffolder. Other people, they're like, you're a tiger. No, you're a scaffolder.
Scaffolder.
But anyway, he didn't get arrested somehow.
We're probably too busy trying to figure out the joke.
Who cares? That's one of that. Do you know what?
All night now.
On my gravestone, it's going to be, here lies John Bruford. He was a scaffolder.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's all I want.
The next line was me, and then the police turned around and said, but no, nothing, not scaffolder.
Nothing.
No, that's it. That's it. I'm so sorry, Tony. I got you here under false pretenses. So where can people learn about the Red Card Gambling Support Project?
Website's best where everything is in terms of online courses, in terms of booking workshops, booking my speaking engagements, just so you know. www.redcardgambling.org, www.redcardgambling.org. We are on all the social media platforms, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. And obviously, I don't mind giving the office phone number out. They can contact me direct, whether it's family, friend, work, colleague, whatever it is, support for someone. Anybody can call us and have a chat. And that's 02476 214 423.
02476.
Yeah, 214 423. But all the contact details on the website anyway. So mobiles and emails on the website. So we welcome contact from absolutely anybody.
Except me, presumably, unless I've got a better story.
Joke. Yeah.
Sorry about that.
It's not a good joke.
I've got some good jokes, but when you're in a banter-rich industry, you'll have heard them all.
Yeah.
I'd say the jokes on the bus to an away game or something must have just been...
Yeah.
Well, Fintan's experienced building site banter, which can't be far away.
Oh, there's guys who could have been stand-up comedians just doing like a 30-minute set while eating a bacon sandwich.
See,
and you'd have 50 lads just in tears.
Yeah. And there are people that can naturally tell, Joe. I'm not saying, John.
Not saying me.
I've seen it done really well, just not here.
There are, though.
Now, you see, that's funny, Tony.
Yeah, see?
Yeah, it's hilarious.
Brilliant.
I didn't get out of bed this morning to get dissed. Damn it.
Yeah, and obviously, it's Christmas time and all that, so my story is, I call it, obviously it's tragic, but it's inspiring in terms of coming out the other side. So that's hence why the subtitle of Red Card, I Bet You Can Win, because it just gives people hope that you can come out the other side. So yeah, as you both already said, usual outlets and Amazon and WH Smiths and Barnes and Noble, etc.
Brilliant.
Sweet. Tony Kelly, thank you very, very much for joining us, and the best of luck with the Red Card project. And if there's anything that we can do to help and support, then just say, because you are now a friend of the podcast.
Yeah.
If you've enjoyed this episode of the Gambling Files podcast, please find us on LinkedIn. Give us a big, juicy, succulent like. That nearly went wrong. You can find us under the name The Gambling Files Podcast. You can find us on Twitter under The Gambling Files. I think the handle is just @Gambling Files. You can connect to myself, John Bruford, or Fintan Costello, also on LinkedIn. We're also both on Twitter. And you can find all of our previous episodes at www.thegamblingfiles.com. If you enjoyed it, please share, tell your friends, tell your family, tell your colleagues, and we'll see you next time.